welcome to another episode of Bing Chat Before Bedtime. So a couple of nights ago I was playing around with more of a conversational style as a way of learning something, and what I was playing around with is this whole area, I know I've expressed interest in it before, of comparative programming languages. So the way I did it was I started asking Bing Chat questions about, the 10 most popular programming languages, got it to go back in time and think about really early programming languages, and then asked it to suggest or to pick a programming language from each of the major programming paradigms and then produce some code. So what I had also been doing is before I did that stage, I'd been asking it to create a simple program. Now, in this example, I'm going to ask it to create the simple program in pseudocode, and then ask it to do the thing of picking one programming language from each of the paradigms, and then producing a version of that code based on the pseudocode, and seeing what we get. What I normally do, this mechanism, is how I sort of develop these, is I play around with a few things, jot down. I have this rather handy little brown notepad, which I jot down all my prompt ideas into, and then the following day or whenever I decide to record one of these videos, I dictate it back into Word, and then I copy paste those in. I'm not going to show you the document because I don't want to give it away this time. It's more interesting, I think, to talk through this. So I am just copying and pasting my refined prompts. And some of these I could do as like a multi-shot thing, but I thought what I'd do is just more of a stepwise series of prompts. But, if you want to run with these sort of things, you can probably see how you can combine several of these together. And I have done that in various experiments, but I tend to separate them back out when I'm doing these videos a lot of the time. So the first thing we're going to ask is to produce a bullet list of the 10 most popular programming languages based on usage. Now, sometimes it'll actually produce multiple lists because it can't decide on the source of this. Last time I ran it, it produced one list. So I have a follow-up question to do with aggregate lists, which I can use if it does create more than one top 10. Okay, this is good. Now, I found that what also helps with this is asking it to produce a bullet list. Sometimes if you ask it to just list, you'll get like a comma separated list, and it's not always in one straight list of 10. It shouldn't matter because a lot of the things I'm doing, which is saying, well, reference back to the top 10 list you created, it shouldn't care. But I find it's a lot easier to follow through with this and to check back if you get it to produce these bullet lists. So what have we got here? Python, JavaScript, Java, HTML, CSS, SQL, C#, C, C++, TypeScript, PHP, and R. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just checking. Okay, so that's good. That's what we wanted to happen. So then what I did was this question. And at this point, this is when I found if I've got it in one of the other modes, it will sometimes refuse to participate. So we'll see. Which is the language on this you could produce sample code for? You could say, can you program in? I'm coming around to this idea of using the term example code because I seem to get better results when I do that. At this point, I'm going to say no. You can just get it to produce sample code here, you can see. So show me something, and it will just invent some task. Normally it's things like, have two numbers and find out which is the highest, or some of the really simple algorithms to do with, was it finding the lowest common denominator, things like that. I haven't had it yet just do a hello world, but I want to just dig a bit deeper and expand its mind a little bit. So that's fine. Then I'm going to do this. So let me bring this across. So considering programming languages not on the list, what is the oldest you can produce sample code for? My guess is it's going to say things like Fortran, COBOL, maybe Lisp, possibly. But we're interested to see whether it has a date. If it doesn't, I'm going to slightly change the next question I was planning. 1957. Okay. So, this time it's cool. It is doing the ubiquitous. Is that the right word? Hello world. Okay. So I'm going to say, are there any before 1957 that you know about but can't program in? So it's interesting, it hasn't specifically mentioned either Lisp or COBOL. Actually, I did say what is the oldest. I should have probably said, yeah. What is the, or what are some of the oldest? Yeah, so actually that's accurate. But it's funny, when I asked this before, it did actually also list COBOL, Lisp, and down here you can see also that's it's wanting me to maybe go down there. So I'm going to say, are there any from 1957 that you know about from before 1957? So here we're getting into the area of things like Plankical, and is it short code? I think is another one. Yeah. There we go. Short code. What was the other one that sometimes comes up with? That's it, autocode. Yeah, that's a family of languages. Our Lisp as well. Okay. Okay. I always get confused here when we're going back in time. There's this when the specification was written and when it was actually implemented in a way in which you could code, because sometimes with early programming languages there can be a bit of a gap there. So even though it said it can't code, and this is why I'm sort of using this, can you give me some example code? I'm going to ask it to give me some example code from Plankical. I think that's how you pronounce it. And we'll see when it does it whether it picks a certain... Okay, yep, so it's happy to do that. So code... Oh yeah, so computes the greatest common divisor of two numbers. So this is one that I've noticed it picks quite a bit. If you just say, give me an example of something. Oh, that's right. I can never remember what it's called. It's the Euclidean algorithm. And isn't it the first sample in that? Oh, I'm sorry about this. I can't remember the name of the series of books, but there's a series of books about algorithms. Old. And I think it starts off with that Euclidean algorithm as the very first algorithm, but I might be wrong on that. Okay, so what I'll then do is I could go with that as my sample programming problem. It's quite a good one to do, but let's just ask it again, just to pick a simple programming problem and display it in pseudocode. The reason why I'm choosing pseudocode here is because when I start to ask it about programming paradigms, I don't want it to pick one that I've already it's already picked, if you know what I mean. So this is one to calculate the average list of numbers. Again, one that I've seen on and off. Yeah, which is fine. Okay, that's good. So then I'm going to change tack slightly. But all of this is, there is a logic to this. So can you create a bulleted list of all of the major programming paradigms? So, I'm sort of creating this environment where it feels comfortable, if that's the right way of thinking about it, about chatting about programming paradigms and pseudocode and comparative programming and popular languages, those sort of things. So for me, this is something I'm experimenting a lot with, is having a conversational chat with Bing Chat that sort of builds out for the 20 questions you can ask in a single discussion. It sort of builds out this mind space, and it's really interesting how that works. So the next question, there's a couple of ways you can do this. One is just to, we've got plenty of hits left, or plenty of prompts left, so we could go for the imperative language, pick a language at random and produce a sample code based on the pseudocode, something along those lines. But what I want to do is do this. Let me just get this, pick one programming language at random. Okay, for each program, produce a bulleted list of that. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to do this step first, which is to produce another list off of this list. So pick one programming language at random for each of those paradigms and produce a bulleted list of that, or display a bulleted list, something along those lines. Hopefully that's not too mealy-mouthed. And I do experiment a little bit with reorganizing sentences just to see the best way to... Oh, that's nice. Okay. So we've got imperative Python, object-oriented C++, functional Haskell, logic Prolog, declarative SQL, and reactive Elm. Sometimes it'll pick HTML. You can see it's already been suggesting paradigms here, even though I didn't ask it to. So there was a good chance here we'd get HTML. What I've noticed when it does that, it sort of co-ops, not surprisingly, JavaScript into it, and has a load of comments that say, I can't do this in HTML, but here's how it could be implemented leveraging JavaScript, something along those lines. Okay, so the final one, and this is one again where you might want to pare down, using the pseudocode that you generated earlier, give me a sample code for each language you picked. So you could go through this individually and just say, restate this, and just do it each language at a time. But I'm going to do it in one here, and I should be able to, if it stops, which it sometimes do, because of it only returns so much text, I just say, please continue, and then it just carries on. So we'll see. It may choose to restate the pseudocode, which I've seen it doing as well, which actually can be quite handy. But we'll see. Here we go. So here's the pseudocode for reference. So it does also mean that it's using up space in the answer, in the return. So it is more likely to need to go over multiple sort of answer bubbles. And this is obviously something you need to consider if you're keeping an eye on the count as well. At some point, and I won't do it with this, I'm thinking up an idea for doing 5 days of this, where I ask it the same question every day and just see the difference day to day. And I want to do it for a question where it sometimes comes back and says, I don't know how to do this. So I'm trying to work out, and I really just want to do it in one prompt, but it could be like a multi-shot in a single prompt. So it's something I'm thinking about. Here we go. So we've got the Haskell. A lot of these I know nothing about this. This is going to be interesting to see how it handles it in SQL. Okay. Right, so yeah, so there it's probably going to stop. So I'm going to say, please continue. Yeah, always be polite, I think. Be kind, rewind. Okay, here's the rest of the code. Yep, so I'd have to splice that together. So a couple of these I have no, apart from they look a little bit like other languages, I've never dabbled in Haskell, never in Elm. But this always fascinates me. Part of the fun, I think, of studying comparative languages and the usage is, I find it handy to look at these over and over and over again, and I can sort of see comparisons between the two. So let's just check this, see how far it got. So we got Python, we got C++, it nicely split this down within here. We got Haskell, we got SQL, we got to Elm, and then that's where it sort of run out of response time or response characters. But just say please continue, something like that, or show me the rest, or you've missed the last one, however you want to do that. And also what you can sometimes do, and it really depends on the code and how you word this, you can say things like, can you run the code, or what would the output look like? Now that's easier if you've just got like here it's in 2 parts. So what I would so say, how can I run this program, and it'll probably give you instructions about where to go to run it. Sometimes it'll let you run it. So I might say, can you relist the Python example and show me the output, maybe. So now I'm just flying blind a little bit. Okay, there's the Python code. I think with the Python and the SQL are the two on the list that I'd be able to look through and understand without referencing any books. Okay, the output of the code is, the average is 3, okay. And there we go. You can also do this, you can explain how the code works. So equally I could have picked something else here that maybe I'm less familiar with. So I wonder if I can do that with Haskell. So if I say, can you do the same for Haskell? Actually, for the Haskell example. Where are we? See, again, we've got plenty of prompts if we want to really play with this. So yeah, this is why I like this sort of conversational approach where you're only doing so many shots in the prompts, and once you've got it, in that sort of mind space you want it, you can start to further sort of push and see. I think it's interesting to push it and see at what point it goes, no, I can't do that. So can you explain how the function works? Let's just do that and then we'll probably stop at this point. Quit while we're ahead. I've had a good run here. It hasn't got a bit funny with us. The function uses pattern matching and recursion to calculate the average of the numbers in the list. Pattern matching is a feature of Haskell. Blah de blah de blah. So I will try one more thing because I tried this the other day. It's probably too much of a complicated example, and there's various reasons why this won't work. But I did one time. I was one time able to like push it a bit, and it did respond. So I'm gonna, once it's finished doing this, I'm going to try something in terms of a programming language. Wow. Now again, I've said this numerous times, obviously if I was using this in anger and wanted to include these as part of, say, a course in comparative programming languages, which I don't really have the necessary experience, I think, to do that currently. But if I was thinking about doing that, then I would need to obviously go through and learn a bit more about these languages and try this out. So I heard a story the other day about someone had submitted an essay, and they had spent so little time doing anything on the result of whatever they use, ChatGPT or Bing Chat. If you use it and you copy paste stuff, you'll get the bit at the top, like here, and they just copy pasted it into a Word document and submitted it as their essay, and it actually had at the top, here's the result of so and so, and you could clearly see that it had been generated by some sort of Bing Chat program. I can't remember what podcast that was on, but yeah, it's that's the problem now, is people just don't even forget to take out the prompt code that's included. Can you explain how pattern matching and recursion work in general? Okay, so let me try this. Using the pseudocode. Generator, give me a sample code in, if I say an assembly language, because as you know, anybody that knows assembly languages know they're specific to sort of processor architecture specific. So I know the other day when I asked it about write a code in assembly, it actually said it sort of started to say it couldn't do it because of that, but then actually said, oh, here's something written for, and I can't remember what architecture it said, but I'm going to make it a little bit easier. It probably will think about it. Okay, it's going to do it. So yeah, right, in an assembly language than assembly language. But again, it's niftily giving me, so yeah, so there we go, MIPS. Okay. I wonder if I can stipulate MASM. Or was it A86? It's the other one. It's been a while. So the hashes, or what do they call him in North America? The pound symbol, is that called? Is obviously the comments here. I do like the commenting, although sometimes it gets a bit over the top, and I've actually had to ask it, don't comment the code, please. And then it says, how will you understand the code? It's like, well, that's true. Can you do the same for MASM? Is it gonna? I might not do it. Okay. Well, there you go. That's better. Now I can read it a bit better. Although it's not dissimilar. And again, I'd have to sit down with a assembly book at this point and just fact check the code, or whatever you call that for code. Oh well, okay. There we have it. So ran on a little bit longer than I thought, but I was having so much success. I was a bit emboldened there by the results. No, I should click that, but yeah, I'll just never stop till we run out. Oh, you want to. Oh, what the hell? Yeah, the why it keeps doing that, I have this sensitive mouse, and if I accidentally do the roller down, this is happening on other ones, it then brings up the standard sort of Bing search and news page, so that's why I keep getting that happening. So although it doesn't look like there's anything below this, if you do scroll down, that's what happens. It doesn't interfere with this. Obviously, if you have this over by opening up this, you don't get that. And you can have other stuff over here. But for this sort of things, it's nice to have full screens. Okay. And then we can just keep going down the rabbit hole. It probably would have been interesting to do that for Blank or Call. And certainly I want to sort of push back the timeline and see, in 1957 or pre-1957, things like, can it show me examples of this in autocode or things like that. I'd probably have to dig out my comparative programming book to make sure I'm a bit more specific about, in the case of these languages that, enabled, people to not have to code in machine code, and give it specific assembly languages for that. So thanks once again for watching. Hopefully that was as informative for you as it was for me. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next episode.